Hello, thanks for joining us. I am Obiora Ilo, welcoming you to your Sunday show, Frontline. Well, today on our program, we'll be looking at three issues. We'll be looking at the ongoing controversy about the best way to approach the insurgency in the country. As usual, we'll be linking up with our contributor from the United Kingdom, Temitope Olodo. Temitope will be joining us by phone and analyzing the issues here because he was just in Nigeria about a week ago to review the situation himself. We'll also take you on a trip back to 1993. That was when we had the popular June 12th annulled elections. Well, Professor Humphrey Nwosu had been away from the news for so long. Some time ago, he wrote a book which he called Laying the Foundation for Nigeria's Democracy. And that book was a book he used to tell his own story about what happened on June 12, 1993. Many people have criticized that book. They said he didn't tell all, he held back a lot, he blamed the wrong people and exonerated some wrong people. Well, we spoke with Humphrey Nwosu and he has his own side of the story. And we'll be talking to the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, who was in Nigeria not too long ago, reviewing the human rights situation all over the world with particular reference to Nigeria. Don't go away. Frontline continues in a moment.
The news.
And joining us from faraway United Kingdom is Temitope Olodo. Temitope Olodo is a security consultant who has worked with international security organizations, especially the UK security outfit. Temi, you're welcome to Frontline.
Thank you very much for having me on Frontline.
Yeah, Temi, you were here about a week or so ago, actually while you were in Nigeria. We had one of the bomb blasts in Nyanya. And one of the reasons for your trip was to see things for yourself and analyze firsthand what was happening in the country.
Yes.
What was your conclusion from that visit?
My conclusion was very simple. We have a situation where we are firefighting on issues that we should be more proactive about. And we are slow in putting in preventive and protective measures to protect lives, even after incidents are happening over and over again. There seems to be, we seem to have a zombie approach to dealing with issues. And when I say a out that these are the measures that need to be in place in these areas where people's lives could be at risk. These are 1, 2, 3, 4 things that we need to do. As you know, when we spoke on 2nd of March, which was just about a few weeks ago, some of the things I highlighted that we should have in schools were not implemented in schools where unfortunately 200 kids were adopted. And I know Nigerians can listen to your program, and I know that you are interested in the welfare of Nigerians, will be asking themselves, why is it that some of the measures that were mentioned about 4 or 5 weeks ago, have not been implemented? And I think that's why most Nigerians are getting angry. That's why Nigerians are becoming restless, that it seems as if our security service are sleepwalking as in reality with regard to how to resolve matters about this security challenge that we are confronting at the present moment.
Okay, Temi, just this morning I was driving from the airport in Abuja into town proper. And of course, I was riding with 1 or 2 other people, and the general impression was that the security checks were not actually achieving the results they were supposed to achieve, because we just got there and somebody looked at us and waved us, on. And some of the people I was in the car with were saying that, can there be a more sophisticated approach? Like, are there no gadgets around anywhere in the world where you can, a gadget you can install on that road, like a weighbridge, and the car goes over it and you're like x-raying everything in that car? Is it something we should be doing or something we should be considering at this time?
Definitely, these are things that we should be considering. Unfortunately, we seem not to be looking at examples from around the world on how things should be done. Let me just mention very briefly. When the UK was at the foot of the insurgency from the IRA, the whole security mapping of London, which was a target area, was remarked. So some places were turned into a two-way approach, some places were turned to one-way approach, and those are the kind of things that should be put in place. You see, there are technologies that could help us, but we are not actually looking at this. We are not sitting down to map how things should be done. And those are the things that I say that should be done. Unfortunately, we are not asking questions. We are not bringing in the kind of people that we should be bringing in. And I think I have a fear, and I believe many Nigerians share this with me, that Nigerian security services seem to feel they know it all. And that's where the problem is. Look, Nigerian security services are very good. I'm not saying they're not good. They're losing lives. I'm not saying a lot of Nigerian security experts are there. But the problem is, in situations like this, you need to cooperate with. How many Nigerians that have security expertise abroad have been called upon since this incident has been happening? We don't know. And we don't know what has been happening because it seems as if they're making the same mistakes over and over again. And that's where the problem is at the present moment.
Yeah, Temi, that actually leads me to the next question. Is it not time as a country facing this this monster that we are facing now, is it not time as a country we should reach out to more advanced countries that have been challenged with situations like this, countries like Israel, countries like America, countries in the West? Is it not time? Will it be unpatriotic if we do that, or will it be, compromising our sovereignty if at this time we have this kind of problem and we are looking for help outside?
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, this is the time that we need it. Last week, the Speaker of the House called, summoned the service chief and actually gave them a one-week ultimatum. Luckily, I think none of them will be losing their job because the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Gordon Brown, has actually called on the United Kingdom to bring in the military, the UK military, to come and help with the current challenge that we are facing. We need help. We need to invite other countries that have gone through this challenge, like Israel, like the United States, even Iraq. We need to speak to the commissioners there, police and
Okay, Tomitobo, as usual, it's a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm sure we will continue to talk with you and your colleagues out there as we pray and hope that a solution is found at some point.
Thank you very much for having me on Frontline, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. And I did promise at the beginning of the program that I'll take you back to June 12, 1993. And my vehicle this morning is the former chairman of NEC, the National Electoral Commission of Nigeria, as it then was, Professor Humphrey Nwosu. We had a very detailed interview with him, but today we'll just serve you a little of it as we prepare you for the main course in the weeks to come.
May 18, Shoniko and S. Shoniko, who had a transition to civil rule government, who took over day-to-day administration from Babangida, is still alive. Professor Nwabweze, who was Secretary of Education, was there. Late M.T. Imbu, Francis Oji, and a host of them. I was invited to their council to explain to them the preparation I had made with my commission for success.
This was after Babangida had left office?
No, May 18, 1990, before June 12. Okay. June, because he was supervising day to day. Okay. Yeah, but we said, you know, and Shoniko is still alive. And I'm surprised none of them is talking. And everything is blamed on me. You know. So he invited me. Nwabweze is still there. Explain to us the arrangement you made that will make for successful, credible election. I went there. My director of legal services, Buhari Bello, from Kebbi State, still alive. The secretary of the commission, Alhaji Ali Umar. My image maker, Tony Iradia, who later on MD, NTA, was there. We went a powerful team with diagram. I engaged them for almost 1 hour, 30 minutes, explaining all the processes, the logistic preparation, especially how to take sensitive electoral materials to remotest areas in Nigeria, places like Adamawa Hill, Niger State, riverine area, creeks, you know. We formed what I called Interministerial Logistic Committee, because election is a civic duty at all levels, national level, state level, local government level, with community leaders mixed up with religious, mixed up with inter-ethnic, credible people, even at world level.
Were they satisfied with?
Yeah, they were satisfied, you know, all to mobilize transportation means to make sure that there was no failure of moving material from where they were.
So when you explained to the government?
I explained, and the process of announcing the result incorporated in Decree 13 that allowed us to conduct June 12 election 1993. People have forgotten what we do is guided by law. Akpambo was then late the Attorney General of the Federation. In Decree 13, a section of it, there was a provision that once date and time have been set for general election in Nigeria, no court can stop us. But Ikpeme court tried to stop us May 10, or June 10. So I explained all this, that when result will be released, no one, not the president, not you, not the Transitional Council, in keeping with the decree, in keeping with the law, the process will start from the polling station to collation center at ward, to local government, to state, to national headquarters. That we would mount a large board to make it transparent. there will be no government interference in the process in keeping with the law. So, it happened. The results were being released. Didn't you know about the big signboard?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, the big signboard, we were releasing the results as they came in. And people were satisfied. Nigerians mounted all over the place. Abiola was leading with all this explanation. They gave me stand-up ovation. That if you're able to implement this, you and your commissioner will be national heroes. And that's exactly what we did June 12th. So there was nothing wrong in the logistics of the election, voters register, nothing. Results were being released. Suddenly, there was interference by Abuja High Court. Chief Judge of Abuja, don't release further results again. That was June 15, 1993. But
the
wait.
decree does not allow that to happen.
No, the decree, that's having conducted election. Mm-hmm. And the court says don't do this. You have, because if we had obeyed Justice Ikpeme's decision on June 10, the opportunity for election would have been lost forever. Because all the national commissioners were in the field, all the sensitive electoral materials had gone out of permanent staff of NEC. So this one, it was most unexpected. It was an interference, and we wanted to evacuate it. In any case, I was summoned at the meeting, the highest meeting of the country, of the military regime, National Defense and Security Council. I was called. How do we know about the result? Through your signboard. I said, yeah, that's what, and we will announce, even if you don't write it in signboard, after collation, the chief returning officer will announce who had won, without any person having pre-knowledge. And there were monitors, international monitors. They were, at the NEC headquarters. With this, and I was served by Abuja Commissioner of Police, don't release further result. Now, I had to summon my commission. Before then, you could recall, on June 10, exactly 9:30 in the night, something unexpected also happened. Justice Ikpeme, late, gave judgment in the night that NEC should not conduct the election before even the announcement of the, because that's courageous step my commission took, which people do not appreciate. Don't. At the time they did, the person who came to inform me was the director of legal services in NEC with his assistant around 10:40. And when they came in, I said, what? He said, we've been asked not to conduct the election. I said, which court will do that? But we already had earlier this thing. He said, but they've ignored it. I tried to reach the Attorney General, I couldn't. Tried to reach the President, I couldn't. All my national commissioners were in the field. I had only Director of Legal Services. He's still alive. The Secretary of the Commission, Alhaji Umar. Well, having failed to reach the President, I said, the first thing in the morning, I will meet the Attorney General because he is the Chief Law Officer of the... What is happening? I went to him first thing before 8 o'clock. He said, you are Director of Legal Services and I just left. That he had asked him to bring all the decrees on transition to... He said, what is he bringing all this? We are talking about election tomorrow. He said, no. That, look here, there will be election. I said, how? This judgment have been given. He then told me, he, as an Igbo man, Akpambo, you, Humphrey, as Igbo man, heading NEC, Umadi was lawyer for ABN. Zeribe was the coordinator of ABN. Go home and relax. There will be election. I didn't take him seriously. And he's made a statement that changed the equation throughout the country. He said they would have meeting at 10 o'clock. That was June 11. And after the meeting, I would be asked to go ahead with the election. Something in me asked, would there be a meeting, highest ruling body in this country, with me, a chief electoral officer of Nigeria, not being invited? I wanted to ask the Attorney General. I said, no, I wouldn't, but I will attend the meeting, uninvited. I knew, I suspected, because that he might be a party to those, because the military then was divided, those who wanted the election and those who didn't want election. Pro-Abacha group, I'm saying it authoritatively because it's in my book. And the man who wrote the foreword in the book, Colonel Omar, said so too. I said, I will attend. Have you seen ordinary civilian attending the meeting of the highest ruling military body in any country?
Did you attend eventually?
I attended.
And what happened at that?
Good question, because that had to do with annulment and what happened with the election and the steps my commission took. When I went, because the chances was I wouldn't have been admitted, but I was lucky. The security thought that I was invited. Being chief electoral officer, they opened the gate, open. I got in. When I got in, the president ADC, Bamale, he died of this thing, was among those who wanted the election. He informed the president that I was around. He said, Humphrey was around. Well, you know, he asked that I should come upstairs. He invited me to the meeting. That's why when I arrived, Shoniko was there. All the military hierarchy. Nyako was deputy to Abacha. He's still the military governor of Adamawa. Let any of them controvert what I'm saying 21 years after. I'm telling you what happened authoritatively. I attended a meeting uninvited to save June 12th. When I got there, the president asked, why are you here? I said, I'm here because of the election tomorrow. He said about the court judgment. I said, that court judgment cannot hold on my commission. He said, why? Akpambo didn't explain to him that provision of Decree 13 says that once date and time have been set for election, no court can stop. I reminded the president. He realized like this. Because the military people, it's the Attorney General that should have explained to him. He said, why? What provision? I reminded him, Ajibola is still there. Former Attorney General, when I was NEC chairman, is from Ogun State. You can verify this. I reminded the president that in 1991, before the governorship election of December 14, 1991, there were a spate of court injunctions. Don't do this, do this. The president called Ajibola and myself, find a solution to this spate of court injunction so that his transition to civil rule program will not be derailed. And court jurisdiction not ousted. We came up with this provision. Once date and time is set, you can't stop us. And this has been challenged and upheld by Federal Court of Appeal in Ibadan. I explained it. Akpambo had not arrived. When I was saying that the Secretary to Government, Mohammed, went to inform Akpambo had arrived, that Humphrey was upstairs. Get ready. He came upstairs. Babangida asked him, Humphrey, say all that you said about provision of the law. I repeated all that I've said. He said, Akpambo, what's your opinion? He said, I should obey the law. There should be no election. It's in my book. How many people have read it? Having defied the military hierarchy. I'm not a military, I'm just a technical man appointed to supervise election. So, don't come. I wasn't invited. I went, so and Baba, I will. When Akpambo said I should obey the law, no election, I came with the Director of Legal Services, Bello. You can verify. He's in Abuja. Bello said, my learned senior, don't misdirect this august body. Are you saying that the Abuja High Court superior?
Well, I did tell you that we're just serving you a little bit of that interview. The full interview will be broadcast on Frontline this same time on Sunday, so you watch out for it. Just a few weeks ago, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights was in Nigeria. I had a chat with her.
Although, of course, issues such as torture and ill treatment and overcrowding in prisons trouble me, but more especially are economic rights of Nigerians to address poverty, to address proper funding for education, health, and well-being of people for social services, including the courts, the police who are underfunded. So all these services are not receiving funds, and Nigerians need to ask why. Why is that? Where are the resources going? Is it due to corruption? And I welcome that the President Jonathan is in fact looking into it and has called for an audit on the issue of corruption.
Okay, something took a lot of your time on this trip, and that's the insurgency in the northern part of Nigeria. The government is facing quite a challenge containing this group of people that are doing so much damage to lives, to property, and to the well-being of people in the north. How would you see government's reaction and the effort of the military to contain this insurgency within respect for human rights?
You know, before I answer that, let me say that even the Boko Haram situation can be traced to human rights concerns as violations, because this was a dispute between agriculturalists and pastoralists and the shortage of land. And this is why I began speaking to you about economic rights. I very earnestly addressed the question of how the government is addressing the and controlling the activities of Boko Haram in the northeast, and they tell me that they are in control. They're reducing levels of violence. They're deeply troubled by the level of atrocities. This is something new for Nigeria. It didn't happen before. And I've also pointed to the lack of regional cooperation across the international borders. I see Nigerians being forced to flee Nigeria as refugees, but across the border from the other side are guns, weapons coming in, and also extremists coming in. So therefore there needs to be a cooperative spirit. I've also raised with the government excessive force used by the security forces and the police, and they are aware of some incidences, and they have prosecuted several members of the force themselves. They've sent out very clear messages to soldiers and police to observe the rule of law. I still think that they need to provide access to NGOs, the National Human Rights Commission, and monitors to see that civilians are not caught up between the rebels and government forces.
Okay, it's difficult for a lot of Nigerians to understand that this group of people who have no respect for human rights has no respect for any rights, saying that education is evil and trying to make people run away from education, that there should be an agitation for their own rights. How do you reconcile? How do you explain this to the ordinary Nigerian who is at the receiving end of this violence?
These are terrible people committing terrible violence with the notions of no education, say even for girls, or no Western education. We condemn them. On the other hand, Nigeria must respect the rule of law. This is a country which fought for these rights. This is a country that has signed up to every human rights treaty which sets the universal standards. So Nigeria cannot in turn commit crimes in dealing with the criminal group. And I'm sure that all Nigerians will understand that. They would not want to meet atrocity with atrocity. They are also very careful to request that civilians, women, children, are not caught up in this. And the most recent attack on children in schools, horrified the international community. But we still find safety in following the rule of law. There are good laws in South Africa where perpetrators can be brought to trial and punished.
Okay, you also talking to the press and in some of the activities you've been engaged in this period that you've spent in Nigeria, you talked about the effects of corruption. What would be your suggestion for a country like Nigeria? How they should go about fighting corruption?
Corruption breeds mistrust. The ordinary Nigerian then suspects everyone at the banks, the authorities. They want accountability and good governance. These must be addressed at the highest level. And I welcome that President Jonathan has begun to do this by setting up this audit of the petroleum company.
One of the issues that have become controversial in the recent past is the same-sex marriage controversy. In Nigeria, a law has been rolled out. In a country like Uganda, a law has been rolled out. A couple of other countries are talking about it. But for African leaders, they're insisting that in talking about same-sex marriage, in talking about the rights of those that want to be in that kind of marriage, that the cultures, tradition, mores of the individual countries and individual societies must be respected. I'm sorry this is a long question, but I've also heard people say that a man wakes up in the morning and says, what is good for me is human flesh, and that's my right. Are we going to wake up and say, okay, because someone said, that's fine by me, he can eat me up, I love him, then that right must be respected? How do we put this in perspective as we talk about same-sex marriage, especially in Africa?
So obviously that's a bad example. Eating another's flesh is hardly a human right. That's a crime, and that would be punished. Cannibalism is a crime and would be punished. Here, of course, we understand that people lack knowledge about the other, and they turn to long-held traditions and practices. Nigerians should examine firstly where this so-called tradition comes from. It comes from old colonial laws, actually, because this is a kind of prejudice that went on for centuries in Europe. They burnt women as witches, for instance. They had laws that women could be beaten with a stick as long as it was no thicker than a thumb. That's why rule of the thumb. So it's a good exercise to examine where some of these traditions come from. However, of course I understand that people have certain values and standards. What I'm saying is that Nigeria's true values and standards are the values that Nigeria signed up to in all these international treaties. That means respect for everyone's rights, respect equality, condemn violence and discrimination, and have tolerance, respect the dignity of the other person. These are Nigerian values. Africa put those values into the international treaties, into the African Charter. The rights of equality and non-discrimination are in the Nigerian constitution. And for all these years, despite a lack of understanding or clinging to traditional prejudices, there has been tolerance in Nigeria. There has been no prosecution of gays and lesbians in this country. This is what I've been told by the government. And I see that as tolerance. People were not attacked just because they were different. But it seems to be happening now for some same strange reason after the passage of this law. It's as if it's given rise to people with prejudices claiming the right to be violent and attack others.
But this type of lifestyle erodes the values. I mean, you live in a compound with your children, underage children, and then they see in the next flat a man and a man living together. How does that affect the rights of these underage children?
What they see is two people in love, and they could be of the same sex. They shouldn't be stopped from exercising their human right to love one another. Where the state and the community should be concerned is where children are harmed by sexual violence, sexual abuse, which comes in many forms, sometimes within a family, sometimes from strangers. That problem should be addressed far more, the trafficking of children and so on. And if there is an understanding that these are human beings, they're harming no one else, but exercising their right to have consensual sex with one another, if there is an understanding to tolerate that, it's not harming the children or anyone else. That should be the approach.
There was a red flag. I mean, when you were talking about the effects or what I could call collateral damage for laws like the same-sex marriage law, where you said that because these people may be hiding from the law, that may affect negatively the effort to eradicate diseases like AIDS, enlightenment for AIDS and all that. Can you talk more about that? Because that actually got me worried.
First, let me make clear, of course, that HIV/AIDS doesn't happen just in homosexual communities. It's heterosexuals also get AIDS. You can pick AIDS up through infections. Nigeria had reached a level of very high standard in eliminating HIV/AIDS in this country. You were praised all over the world. Now you're back to the position where you're the second largest country in terms of new incidences of HIV/AIDS. So it's gone the other way around. And I feel that the LGBT community will be most affected because this law prohibits not only same-sex marriage, but prohibits a discussion of the topic and exercise of their rights, or others helping them, for LGBT activists to help them. And all this, to me, is a risk that they will be afraid to come forward to clinics to seek medication or prevention or counseling.
Okay. You did your first term as High Commissioner for Human Rights, and against, I won't say tradition, but unusually, you had a second term. What did you do right? What were the things you pursued, that made this possible?
Well, you are quite right. No High Commissioner has had a second term. It's a 4-year term. If you look at the GA resolution, it's a very unique mandate to appoint one person to cover the whole world and to advance the promotion and protection of all human rights of all persons. So some don't want the person to just run independently with that mandate. What I have done over 4 years is to address all rights, but with the balance, with full respect and understanding for the various stages of development in which countries are. And I promote all rights. For instance, coming from South Africa, it was very clear to me I have to address racism. I'm troubled by huge incidents of racism against migrants, particularly Africans, in the whole of Europe. They lose their lives and so on. So racism is a big issue for me. Durban.
Navi Pillay, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, who was in Nigeria not too long ago, speaking to me there. Well, that's the way we are drawing the curtain on our program for today. But don't forget that next week we are featuring the full interview with Professor Humphrey Nwosu, former chairman of Nigerian Electoral Commission, NEC, the man that was at the head when we had the June 12, 1993 elections. I hope you enjoyed this package. I'm Obiorilo from Abuja, Nigeria. Thank you for joining us and asking you to join us again same time next week.